everyone, this is Anna Lutz, and for my video presentation I will be speaking about sexism within the STEM community. So to understand how we got here in the present, we need to look into the past. Over the course of history, there has been a negative stereotype associated with women. They have often negative adjectives associated with them, and also an idea of a lack of competency, which can affect them in their adolescence, self-confidence, self-worth, and how they present themselves in the workplace, and also how a hiring and paying manager can affect their career. Specifically, I want to talk about the lack of equality and recognition. So women who were influential in science but weren't given the recognition they deserve because of their gender. And then also I want to look at how this lack of equality is affecting the workplace, young adolescent girls, and also what that means for a company's success and how that relates to our economy. It wasn't until the late 1970s that Title IX was introduced. Title IX bans discrimination within the workplace, but it wasn't until 2002 when policymakers realized that there were still inequalities that were happening. So what they did is they did an examination of the effectiveness of Title IX. What they realized, according to Walter and McNeely in 2010, that there was a widespread discrimination in STEM communities that was on an uprising. So what that means is that because of the uprising in discrimination based on gender, we were losing our forefront as a nation and as a global force. So also what can lead to this is what McCullough in 2010 attributed to underrepresentation of leadership. Across all different types of jobs, only 1/4 of deans and department heads are women, but it gets even worse in the STEM community. Only 1 in 20 is a department head. So these are the leaderships that are guiding students in the future, but if there aren't any women leaders encouraging other young women to pursue their careers and how to face discrimination, it can cause them to lose their fire, their motivation, and how to deal with difficult situations. And so, for example, in Nigeria, 3 scientists, Aguele, Ideala, and Aloede, in 2008, show that women also experience less confidence, societal, parental, and a positive teacher's attitude towards girls in their education. So when they don't abide to their expected cultural norms, they can be deemed as more of an outcast and as a deviant in the social system. So if they choose a STEM job, they are going outside of what they're expected to do for a girl. So this can definitely affect a self-worth and attribute to the inequalities that we were seeing in the workplace. What most people don't realize is that they have an unconscious bias towards men. They're much more likely to envision a man being in a STEM occupation rather than a woman. This affects both adolescents and adults and can damage their self-confidence and self-worth. So harmless phrases like "you throw like a girl" encourage that women are a weaker and not as good as men, and that can translate into a much older, more severe situation like in the workplace. In the case of Mrs. Raymond in 2013, she did a study with the implicit association test that spanned over hundreds of thousands of people in 34 countries that examined the concepts in relation to gender and occupation. So that means when someone is shown an occupation, what role do you think that would assume most, either a male or female role? So the data shows that 70% of both men and women view science as more male than female. So this incorrect association can lead to a lack of employment opportunities and discouraging girls from going into STEM. So that directly even more so relates to lack of success for a company. And it goes as far as, again, Raymond saying that the gender bias also exists in preschool. So clearly there is still some lack of communication and education for younger children. Other scientists like Weisgram and Bigler in 2007 follow up Raymond's statements. by saying that there are different gender perceptions in the values and the scientific careers, male perceiving greater inherent value in science than females. So this statement directly relates to how women's competency can be seen as lower or less than a man's, which directly relates to them not being put into leadership roles, in which I have discussed previously can relate to younger adolescent girls not perceiving these or pursuing these professions, which are so important to the success of our national economy. And without constant education and strong leaders, biases will continue. And if they do so, there will be a loss of creativity and diversity within the company. Companies are always looking for innovators, but unfortunately overpass women in their hiring process. Because of this lack of diversity, there is less advancements, creativity, and there's not as much fair leadership. Without a lot of creativity and women being in these companies, a lot of advancements can be passed over. In the case of women like Marie Curie, who discovered radioactivity, she was actually dismissed from attending universities that were strictly male just because of her gender. She continued on, though, and was able to win 2 Nobel Prizes for chemistry and physics. And when these workplaces are less fair, there is much more less incentive. Women are even being paid a lot lower than men, but also even worse in the STEM community. And when there's not as good as pay, they clearly will not go for those jobs. The best way to fix these unconscious biases is through education. A study done by Weisgram and Bigler took girls from ages 11 to 14 and educated them on the current situation. So they talked about discrimination and sexism within the workplace. What they found is that it increased confidence in their ability to succeed. This is very important because it challenges the normal roles that the genders have been assigned that's associated with their current culture. And also it can reset a negative feedback that they had in past situations. So they're taught that rather than assuming that they're unable or unworthy because of their gender, they can understand that it could be because of a bias that a teacher could have, or even parents discouraging them from pursuing jobs that have more masculine roles. Even though there has been a long-standing negative stereotype of women in the workplace, especially in STEM communities, it is clearly seen that they add detrimental diversity, creativity, and innovation within the projects they're associated with. Only through education and constant monitoring of the Title IX policy can equality continue. Equality is especially important in globalization and becoming a better workforce. As our world is becoming more globalized, we have to understand that we have to put the past of the negative stereotype of women behind us. Through education of adolescents and leadership roles assumed by women, we can put aside these unconscious biases and move forward. The companies will benefit from their innovation, creativity, and ability to contribute to projects, and also they would be able to break glass ceilings. Once a glass ceiling is broken, it can't go back to once it was.